You've probably seen this before and felt a chill run down your spine. After a heavy rain, you step outside to water your plants, or maybe you're digging a hole to plant a seedling, and suddenly, there it is, half coiled in the wet dirt, something that looks impossible. A thread, a thin, dark, glossy cord, moving all by itself on the ground of your backyard. And then the instinct kicks in. Someone at some point in your life told you never to touch it, that it was a parasitic worm that burrows through your foot, that lives inside your body, stealing your nutrients from within. You've probably heard your whole life that this creature is a silent danger hiding beneath the ground you walk on barefoot every day. And if you're like most people, you did what seemed like the most logical thing in the world. You grabbed a stick, or worse, pulled it out with your bare hand and threw it away, or simply crushed it right there without a second thought. But what you're about to discover is going to completely change the way you look at your garden. Because this creature, the one you may have killed out of fear, is not the monster the urban legend built it up to be. And what it actually does in the silence of the soil is more disturbing, more fascinating, and more important to the balance of your backyard than you could ever imagine. This creature has a name. It belongs to a group called Nematomorpha, commonly known as horsehair worms. And the most repeated myth about them, that they turn into human parasites, that they burrow through your skin when you touch water or soil, is completely false. Here's the first shattered expectation. This worm has absolutely no biological interest in you whatsoever. Its body lacks the structures necessary to survive inside a mammal. If you touch it, if it happens to brush against your skin, nothing happens. No infection, no larvae traveling through your bloodstream. The legend was born from a historical mix-up with other completely different human parasites, and it spread across generations until it became an almost instinctive fear. But here's the real plot twist, and this is where the story gets genuinely strange. This worm isn't harmless because it's weak or simple. It's harmless to you because its target is something else entirely, and the way it attacks that target is one of the most sophisticated manipulations nature has ever produced. The horsehair worm spends most of its life inside the body of an insect, usually crickets, grasshoppers, or cockroaches. And it doesn't just live in there as a quiet guest. It controls the host's behavior. It literally rewrites the decisions that insect makes, right up until the exact moment it needs the host to complete its life cycle. This isn't the story of a scary little creature you should avoid. It's the story of an invisible puppet master living inside creatures that pass through your garden every single day without you ever suspecting a thing. Picture an ordinary cricket walking across the damp ground of your backyard, doing exactly what crickets do. It feeds, avoids predators, looks for shelter. Nothing about it suggests that, on the inside, something extraordinary is happening. Inside that cricket's body, coiled up like a ball of thread, the horsehair worm is growing, feeding on the insect's internal reserves, waiting for the right moment. And then, the moment arrives. The worm reaches maturity and needs one thing that only exists outside the cricket's body: water. Because it's in water that it will reproduce. The problem is, crickets avoid water. Instinctively, they flee from puddles, streams, any liquid surface that could drown them. So the worm does something that sounds like it's straight out of a science fiction script. It begins releasing substances that act directly on the cricket's nervous system, altering its perception of danger. The cricket, now under the influence of this chemical manipulation, starts behaving in a way that completely contradicts its survival instinct. It becomes drawn to water. It walks with growing determination toward a puddle, a stream, a forgotten pool in the backyard. And when it finally reaches the water's edge, it does the unthinkable. It jumps in. This is the decisive moment. Inside the water, the cricket's body gives way, and the horsehair worm, which can measure far longer than the insect that hosted it, begins slowly emerging through the host's skin, like a rope being unspooled from a box far too small to contain it. The cricket, in most cases, does not survive this process. But the worm, finally free, reaches the water, the only environment where it can reproduce and restart the entire cycle. It's a brutal, silent, and absolutely cinematic scene, one that plays out in gardens, backyards, and rural areas across the country without a single camera ever capturing it, without a single human ever noticing. A biological security system running for millions of years, completely invisible to our eyes. And here's the twist that few people know. This behavior isn't just a macabre curiosity of nature, it serves a purpose. Crickets, grasshoppers, and cockroaches, when left unchecked, multiply out of control and can become a real pest for crops and gardens. The horsehair worm, throughout its life cycle, acts as a natural regulator of these populations, an invisible bodyguard of your backyard's balance, working in the shadows, asking for nothing in return except access to a puddle of water. Now, imagine what happens when this silent regulator disappears. Without the horsehair worm keeping part of the cricket and grasshopper population in check, these insects reproduce without the same natural limits. The result isn't immediate or dramatic to witness in a single day, but it builds up over the seasons. More crickets mean more insects feeding on the tender roots of your plants. More grasshoppers mean chewed leaves, destroyed seedlings, ruined vegetable gardens. And there's an even quieter effect. The horsehair worm, once it emerges into the water, also becomes part of the local food chain, serving as food for fish, birds, and other small predators that depend on these wetland ecosystems to survive. Removing this piece of the puzzle, whether by killing the worm when we find it in the dirt or by destroying the small bodies of water where it completes its cycle, means pulling out a link in a chain that sustains far more life than we realize. The garden that looks so simple to our eyes is, in reality, a complex system of checks and balances, where every creature, even the ones that trigger our instinctive fear, plays a specific role. When we rip this living rope out of the soil out of pure fear, we're not just eliminating a strange animal. We're unknowingly removing a piece of a mechanism that works in our favor. So, let's recap the truth behind the myth. That living rope you found in the dirt of your garden is not a human parasite. It never intended to harm you, and it never had the biological capacity to do so. What it actually is one of the most sophisticated manipulators in the animal kingdom, an organism that rewrites another living being's behavior with surgical precision, all in the name of completing a life cycle that existed long before any urban legend was ever invented about it. The horsehair worm deserves a different place in your memory, not as a threat to be eliminated on first contact, but as one of the many invisible guardians that maintain the silent balance of the natural world surrounding your home. It doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't ask you to like it. It simply keeps doing its job, beneath the soil, inside other bodies, at the edge of forgotten puddles, playing its part in a system that sustains far more than we realize. Next time you find that dark, glossy cord moving through the soil of your garden, maybe your reaction won't be fear anymore. Maybe it'll be curiosity. Maybe even a bit of respect. If this story changed the way you see this tiny creature, drop a like, because it really helps the channel keep bringing you these hidden biological mysteries from your own backyard. And if you want to discover other creatures nature disguised as villains, but that actually hide stories just like this one, subscribe to the channel, because the next mystery might be right beneath your feet.